This is Cold Start.
Thanks for joining us for our recap of the United States Grand Prix, the F1 race that just happened here at COTA, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. We happen to have the privilege and the pleasure of attending the race in person. So I want to tell you all about our impressions and our experiences there.
Yeah, what's interesting is that the two of us, we're pretty big car enthusiasts, race fans, the whole nine yards. And going to COTA, that was our first time ever experiencing, for the both of us, F1 in person.
It seems long overdue, right? I mean, I've been watching F1 pretty much regularly since around 2016, right? So this is a long time in the coming, and somehow I've just never managed to get myself physically to a race. So it was really exciting to go for the first time, and with that wide-eyed wonder of what's going to come next, just taking in the sights and scenes.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to kind of hear both of our impressions of going to F1 live in person. Obviously, you are more into F1 than I am. I like F1. I might not be the biggest F1 fan. I'd probably turn on IndyCar or NASCAR before that. And I've been to a lot of NASCAR races in person. I've been to a lot of IndyCar races in person. So this is a really cool comparison of like, how does F1 stack up to those other forms of racing and what it's like to be there in person seeing those cars.
A lot of what F1 is these days is about the spectacle, the entertainment that they create, the overall vibe that they give people, the consumers of this thing, and it's expanded to a huge new base of fans. Drive to Survive, everybody knows, has had a huge expansion in terms of the worldwide footprint of people who are paying attention to Formula One. So it brought out a lot of new people. It's sort of a mixed bag, right? Like those of us who have been kind of harder core fans for a long time are like, we've been watching this thing grow and it's getting to this point, and there's all these new people that just showed up and are kind of glomming onto it. But it brought extra enthusiasm and excitement to the event, and I don't feel like it in any way a detraction from what we were there to see. There was just a lot more people than there might have otherwise been.
Yeah, and I think that COTA, in terms of the U.S. races, so you have Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, Miami, and Las Vegas. I'm pretty sure the Austin, Texas race is the cheaper of the three. Going to an F1 race is never cheap, right? I think that's a big eye-opener for me, is that looking at just like the general admission tickets in comparison to going to an IndyCar race or a NASCAR race is substantially more expensive. And so within those three races in the U.S., for Austin to be one of the more inexpensive ones, I think it draws a lot more people. If you're an American fan of F1, that's kind of the race to go to, just because of the accessibility is a little bit more. And out of those three races, COTA is the only one that's a permanent racetrack as well. So they're kind of built a little bit more to handle a larger crowd.
Yeah, they have grandstands that are there all the time, right? They're set up for track day and motorsports events. They have this whole complex. The venue of Circuit of the Americas is pretty impressive. First of all, the only F1 track, purpose-built F1 track in the United States, the only place where we have any races at a proper circuit, and just the overall sort of like festival atmosphere of this place. They're continuing to expand it. In addition to the primary racetrack, which we all know, the 3.4-mile, 20-turn Circuit of the Americas road course, there's a lot of extra attractions and things popping up around the complex. It's just a cool place, and the scale of it is definitely set up for the level of participation and attendance that we saw. The place was pretty much packed. I mean, we saw maybe a few open seats here and there during practices or so forth, but when the race was on, the place was wall-to-wall bodies.
Yeah, so COTA hasn't officially released the total attendance for the 2025 USGP, but they were expecting that it was going to exceed their attendance in 2024, which was over 400,000 people. And it'll be interesting of where their total attendance gets to, because during the weekend I heard the announcers mentioning a handful of times of, I think this is the most amount of people they've seen at the COTA race. I mean, the place was packed. Starting out on Friday, right, is when we got there to go for some open practices as well as qualifying for the sprint race, which was going to occur on Saturday. And even on Friday, I was blown away by the amount of people that were already there. The first day, it was difficult to get around the track because there was already so many people. And then first day there, I was like, man, this place is going to be an absolute madhouse on Sunday.
Just the logistics of getting in and out of the racetrack complex, the number of parking lots, shuttles, and official vehicles going in and out. And yeah, it was kind of a traffic nightmare. But I guess as well handled as it could be given the influx of the number of people we're talking about. It made it made a really fun event. Everybody there was there for the same reason, was there to have a good time, seemed to be on pretty good behavior all around. I didn't see any rowdy behavior or groups of people doing anything that looked sort of, unexpected or untoward. So people were there to enjoy the race, and they did it.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive, the sheer mass that was going in and out of that facility. Obviously, you're always going to expect some sort of delays trying to get to your parking lot and walking in and stuff like that. Now, getting into experiencing those cars on track for the first time, right? I think that's the more interesting thing is it worth going to an F1 race in person? And how does that experience differ from watching Formula One on the television? Now, when we were first walking down the hill in turn one, kind of getting to our area to be able to watch the activity on track, and the first time those cars hit the track and you're hearing them accelerate for the first time, it was kind of a cool experience. I mean, an unbelievable experience, because it's like you hear these cars on television all the time, right? And everyone has that in their head, this iconic Formula One sound of the modern car, which, yes, arguably is not as great as the old cars. We're not going to get into that conversation. But hearing this for the first time in real life, you're like, oh my God, they sound exactly like they do on television. Like, I know this sound. It sounds so iconic. It sounds so familiar. And in person, there's just that extra little bit of kind of full body experience that occurs hearing these cars on track for the first time.
I expected to be a little disappointed in person, hearing the cars, wanting them to be louder, wanting them to sound like those old F1 cars. But getting there, hearing the howl of those turbo hybrid V6s that are on board on those cars, and hearing the sound be so familiar, to your point, it's like when you tune into the F1 broadcast and you hear that sound effect of a car going by that they'll use as sort of like a bumper on the footage that they're putting on, and then you hear the car go by and it's the exact same sound. It was a really cool experience and something that honestly gave me a little bit of chills, right? The feeling like, ooh, that's exactly what they sound like. That's a Formula One sound. I wonder if they're able to sort of copyright or somehow intellectually protect the property of the sound of the Formula One engine. It was so iconic just to hear this thing, to be in this place, to be looking for this thing, and it all came together in a way that it was a cool part of that. I mean, it really lit me up to hear that sound and to be there in person.
Now, if I were to go see F1 in person for some of the older cars, I probably would be disappointed by the modern day sound. If I was a fan of F1 for a long time and got to watch those old cars race with the high pitch exhaust note and the blown diffusers and all that stuff, yeah, I'd probably be disappointed. But I don't know what that was like to experience, and I think I was more impressed than I thought I was going to be hearing the modern cars. I thought that they were going to be pretty kind of, muted. The sound wasn't going to be that exciting. It wasn't going to be kind of that raw experience that we're so used to with other race cars, right? Like a Porsche Cup car, a NASCAR. I mean, Indy cars even don't really sound that great in person. I would say that the F1 cars definitely sounded a lot better than Indy cars do in person, and it was more of a substantial noise than I was expecting. Now,
but it wasn't like you had to break out the earplugs.
Right, exactly. It wasn't like overbearing, which was kind of nice. Like, right. You go to a NASCAR race, you kind of want to bring a set of earplugs just because of after a little bit of time, you're like, all right, this is doing some damage to my hearing. The F1 cars, I think, were a perfect balance, which is a weird thing to say as a motorsport fan of like, they weren't too loud. But I thought that the sound was actually pretty substantial. And like you're saying, it kind of gave you that feeling of like, wow, this is really special and really cool.
Yeah, there's almost a pitch to the engine that I didn't recognize until I was there hearing it, and then immediately hearing the car make the sound made me think of the broadcast where they use that sound as sort of the outro on the clip. And yeah, it's definitely, it's a signature, and I think they use it well, and hearing it in person was just a cool thing. It's also being at a racetrack where we both have personal experience driving on this racetrack. You've raced there, I've done track days there. So to get to see these vehicles, which we do have some reference to, right? We've been around the Toro Rosso 2019 Formula One car, so we had a little bit of a sense of scale and dynamics and so forth. But to be there and to see that and to have the reference points now to go and look at the main straight up turn one, knowing that big hill that's there, and having those kind of convenient waypoints in mind around what does it look like when they're going through the S's? What does it look like as they're approaching the back straight? What does it look like in the stadium section, that triple apex turn on the back of the racetrack? Those kind of things. It was really cool to see glimpses of that and then to have that own personal reference point for what it was like, when I was out there driving on the racetrack. How did it feel? What did it look like? How fast was it? And then to go back and compare what I did to seeing what the Formula One cars was doing, it sort of blew my mind and put their velocity in a new perspective, right? On a track day, in a really screaming fast car, if you're anywhere around the 2-minute per lap mark at COTA, you're flying.
Yeah.
You're in a powerful car, you're driving it well, you're getting around that circuit. We were seeing times in the 1 minute and 30-second range.
Which is nuts.
A full 30 seconds faster per lap than properly driven fast race cars at that racetrack.
Yeah.
Unreal.
And I don't think that that's a surprise to any Formula One fans of how fast these cars are. I think that everyone's well aware that Formula One cars are the fastest race cars in the world for the most part. Now, that was another thing of being there in person that, the television is just not going to give you that sensation, is the speed, right? Everything on television looks slower. They're always going to pan the shots in such a way that it's not going to show you the raw speed that these cars are going. And being there in person, that is kind of one of those awe-striking things is the straight line speed, how deep they're going into the corners before they get on the brakes, the cornering capability through the S's, watching them just dart through those corners where it almost doesn't seem physically possible that those cars can still be glued to the track. That was so cool to see in person, and you're just not going to get that sensation watching them on television. You have to go in person to see that. Now, another thing was looking at them in real life, on track. For whatever reason, for me, looking at the F1 cars, I was like, they look more elegant and more beautiful, and you can see more of the details and the paint jobs glistening in the light and everything like that. They look so different in person than they do on the television. I think on the television, you kind of get used to them. They become muted. They become normalized in a sense. And then seeing them in real life again, you're like, whoa, these things are pretty gnarly.
They really pop, especially in that really vibrant sunshine that we had while we were in Austin for all 3 days. It was around 90 degrees or more each day, so it was hot. But it was a very clear day, so you can really get a good look at the cars. And yeah, they were putting on a show. There were some special liveries out there. Several of the teams were running COTA special, USGP special liveries on their cars. A ton of different drivers had special helmets that were designed just for this race. To see them going around the racetrack, it was another one of those things where, I'm a fan of actually quite a number of the drivers on the grid, but there's some of them that just stand out or stay in that special place for you. And for me, that's got to be Lewis Hamilton. As much as I'm a Lando Norris fan, seeing Lewis out there go by, watching that Ferrari go up the hill toward turn 1, seeing that yellow helmet, and then just having that pinch me moment of, that's the 44 car. That's Lewis Hamilton. That is freaking Lewis Hamilton right there in front of me driving the race car in this race. And I felt like a little kid just watching that. I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, it's cool how these emotions, seeing something in person completely changes your engagement with that sport, activity, whatever it is. And the funny thing is when you turned to me and mentioned that, I was like, I just thought about that exact same thing. Seeing the yellow helmet go by and be like that's actually Lewis Hamilton. That's actually Max Verstappen. Being able to see those guys in person actually driving these cars, you just have this weird, different connection to it immediately. And I think you can compare this to if you've been a fan of a group, a band, a musician, whatever it is, you've listened to all their albums, you love their stuff, and then you finally get to see them live in concert, right? And up on the stage, you're like, there they actually are, actually in that moment. And I think that's the same sort of experience you get going to motorsports and watching something in person. There's that kind of additional connectivity to that action or activity or whatever it is. And so I think that was exactly what we experienced in that moment and makes it extra special to go there in person.
Yeah, they do that star power thing really well, right? That we talk about the spectacle of Formula One. They help you realize each of these people are at the top of their game. They're out there doing it. You hear the cars going by. The experience of being in person too, there were certain sensory experiences that you couldn't possibly have just watching it on the television, right? standing near the hill that goes up to turn one. They call this area, the spectator area, Big Red. It's a big hill on the side, and it's just like flooded with people. There was this smell in the air. And we're like, at first thinking, was it the fuel that they use? What is the fuel that they use in Formula One? And why is it kind of a weird, almost like a burning kind of a smell? And then we said, well, maybe it's tires. And it's like, well, they're not really in the braking zone where we're seeing that happen. And eventually I think we figured out that cars were bottoming out going up the hill to turn one. There's that wooden plank or that composite plank that's underneath the race cars. I think that was bottoming out as they were going up the hill. And a few times we were able to see some sparks. There's this little bump that right before the incline really picks up going up the hill to turn one, we saw several cars sparking, and we realized what we're smelling is the plank underneath the car burning and the friction from the racetrack kind of, contacting it. It was really cool.
A smell of a mixture of whatever the wood is that they use for the bottom of the car, plus like maybe a little bit of carbon fiber burning as well.
Yeah, Jabrock, I think they call that stuff.
It was an interesting smell. Like, and it was something, I'd never smelled that race car smell and going to NASCAR events or IndyCar, and I was kind of like, this is interesting. Like, F1 cars smell different on track. And so it's cool to be able to compare like the F1 spectacle to the IndyCar and the NASCAR spectacle. Now, I'd say one downside of Formula One going to one of those live events in comparison to IndyCar and NASCAR, and I was kind of expecting it, which is the accessibility around an F1 track is definitely limited. So you're not able to move around the track and the facility and the paddock and the pit lane as much as you would be able to in a NASCAR event or an IndyCar event. I mean, both NASCAR and IndyCar pride themselves in the fan accessibility to the drivers and to the cars and stuff like that. Obviously, we all know that F1 has their prestige and their levels and
their exclusivity.
You have to be VIP to be able to get into the paddock area and even remotely get close to where the drivers are or the cars or the teams and stuff like that. So that was one thing that was kind of like a little shocking to me, of like the level of lack of access that you were able to have during an F1 race. And even like visibility wasn't great of the track. So there's a lot of hospitality tents. There's a lot of signage. F1 does a lot of like privacy screens on bridges and stuff like that because they know that their fans are crazy and they're going to want to get as good of a view as they possibly can, and they're going to maximize or try to utilize any little bit that they give them.
Even in a distracting place like over the bridge that crosses the racetrack, right?
Right. But even like the view around the track, a lot of the stuff is blocked off because there's hospitality tents. F1 is major in regards to sponsors, money, hospitality, giving people a VIP experience of Formula One. And so that kind of minimizes the accessibility for the general fan, general admission ticket fan, where in NASCAR, you can get a GA ticket and you can kind of get accessibility to a lot. And in F1, it's just very, very limited. You have to pay to play. You have to get up into those hospitality, VIP. You have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tickets if you want that kind of decent and good spectator point.
You could see how they were actually producing the spectacle for television as well. To your point, there is a downside to that in the in-person experience where you are a little blocked or limited in your visibility and your access. COTA itself is a huge facility, the racetrack itself being 3.4 miles long.
Right.
So finding your way, finding the access roads, the points to get from here to there could be a little challenging during the day. There were a few times we said, how far do we have to walk? You could actually see the vantage point you were trying to get to just across the way. But the path to get there was so circuitous. And there's times when that's fine. You're just out walking around. But there's other times where you're trying to get somewhere on a schedule. Like we're going to go back to the place where we agreed we were going to like watch at turn one for this section of the race. And we can't even get there in the next hour just because it's so far to walk.
Right. And I mean, like, the F1 cars, they're only on track for, like, a short period of time. Like, each day they might be on track only twice. And on Friday, we kind of were like, hey, what's it going to be like to try to move around the track if we want to go to different vantage points, see them in different corners? And we realized really quickly that even on Friday, the amount of people that were there, it was just difficult to go anywhere in any period of time. And we quickly realized it's like, dude, if this is the Friday crowd, like, on Sunday we have no shot. Like, and on Sunday, let's just figure out where we want to be and kind of lock in for the race, because it's not going to be worth fighting the fight trying to move around and trying to get to other places around the track. Now, that being said, as well as your comment in regards to F1, you could tell they kind of gear it towards the television side of stuff. You can really feel that when you're there at the track. It's not going to be as good as watching it on television, right?
That's true.
And that is like the harsh reality is like, if you're going to an F1 race because you want to see the race, you're not going to get that. Like that is the harsh reality of you're going to only be able to hang out in a couple corners. You're only going to see a little bit of the action. The cars are going to go around. They're going to come back around. You're going to be like, wait, that car's gone. What the hell happened? Like, you're not going to be able to see all the action. There's only so many Jumbotrons. You're going to try to bring up the live stream on your phone. Everyone's fighting for the same internet bandwidth. It's not going to work out real well. Then you're like, well, why the hell am I at F1 watching it in person if I'm just staring at my phone the entire time trying to figure out what the hell's going on? And I think that was a really big realization. And it's like any motorsports in general, is that if you go to the event in person, you're not going to like watch the whole race, understand what everything's going on. You're going there for the experience of being there live, which is a completely separate thing, right? It's the sights, the sounds, the feeling, the emotions, being there with the crowd, the overall energy. That's why you go in person, not to watch the entire race or the race as a whole.
Trying to figure out what's happening, though, you're trying to get context. Like you said, cars are going around the track, and then you see them go around the track again, and they're in a slightly different order. And you don't know what happened to sort of change that order along the way. Did somebody have a problem? Did somebody just let somebody else pass? You have no context. And so
Right.
the overlay that you get, the graphics, the statistics, the view into what kind of times people are putting down, you have none of that. And there's really no way to get that other than watching the broadcast. So can you imagine spending thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars to get access, to get presence at this race, to get a good seat or a suite or a hospitality environment, and to sit there for a good chunk of the time watching TV, watching the screens, because you need some context to know what's going on. You see cars going around. Okay, Max is in the front again. We know what's happening. He's probably still leading, but how much of a gap is there between him and the next car? Well, you can count seconds off or something like that and
Right.
see what it is the next time around, but you can't pay attention to too many things at once if you're doing that. So it's definitely a removed from the totality of awareness that you get watching on TV, watching a broadcast of the race. You don't get cutaways to multiple camera angles. You don't get overhead shots of the entire racetrack. It did make it a little hard to figure out what was going on. And we're talking about people who know what's going on track. We're both experienced racing, participating, watching these events. So it wasn't for a lack of knowledge. It was just not being able to get the information that you would want to have to know who's performing, how they're performing, what changes have occurred. But you're trying to take it all in, and before you know it, it's over, and that 45 minutes or that hour goes by really quickly. So yeah, those are things I'd say about the in-person experience that are shortcomings, and it actually makes watching the race in a streamed form, in a broadcast form, superior in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think for anyone that's thinking about going to an F1 race in person, it's just setting your expectations to be realistic of what it's like to watch motorsports live. If you're thinking, I'm going to go to the race and I'm going to get to see all the action, that's most likely not going to happen, especially in Formula One, where through an entire 50-plus lap race, there might be 3 major moments of overtakes or changing of positions. The likelihood that that's going to happen in the corner that you're at is pretty low, right? Like, we were positioned in turn 1, and during the COTA race, there was a great battle between Norris and Leclerc, and I was just hoping that it was going to come to a climax in turn 1, because that's the only thing that we can see.
Right.
He ended up making the overtake happen on the back straight corner at the end of the back straight, which we didn't get to see, right? And then all of a sudden they come back around. You're like, oh, Norris is in the lead. I missed the cool action that happened live. I'm only going to be able to see that overtake when I go home and I rewatch the highlights of the race that I was just at. So it's leveling those expectations where you're not going to get everything and all of the stuff that you get from watching it on television, right? You're so spoiled nowadays as a spectator with racing, with all of the camera views. They do amazing camera work, the tight shots, the high definition, the replays, all this stuff. You get such an amazing experience at home. The only thing that you don't get at home is like what we're talking about, is this like very surreal experience of getting to feel, smell, see, hear these cars in person, which I would argue is worth it. It's just setting the expectations that that's the experience you're buying and you're going there for, not necessarily getting to see all the action of the race.
It's definitely a shortcoming where there's action and excitement happening and you just can't see it. And if you were just sitting at home on your couch, you'd have a better view of things and a better sense of what's happening, what's developing, race strategy, things like that are really hard to sort of tease apart from being trackside. But to your point, I think the experience itself was still worthwhile. That sensory experience, that presence, that one of those things, one of the things I think we both did really well is where we could see things. We sat and we watched the race or stood and watched the race. We weren't there on our phones the whole time. We weren't trying to send pictures to other people of like, oh, look here where we are. It was really about trying to pay attention to that. And this is an in-person experience. It's one of those things that I think increasingly people are appreciating now that so much of life is disconnected. It's through social media. It's through this remote connection to other people. But then you show up at this place and you're there with 400,000 of your closest friends and new acquaintances. And you're all there to do a thing and you're excited about the thing. And here come the cars and you hear them coming and you smell them and you see them go away in the distance. And it's still really exciting. And I'd say a worthwhile thing to do, but you definitely have to temper. I remember going home from a session that we watched and then having to watch it again in the broadcast to really figure out what happened. Like
Right.
You could see what happened. You could see the lineup at the beginning. You could see roughly how it finished, but all the in between was sort of a blur. And we had to go back and actually watch the broadcast to make sense of it afterwards.
I think another thing that we did pretty well, especially on race day, was just kind of locking into one spot, like not being in this mindset of like, all right, we need to go here, here, and here and see the cars in all these places. Like whenever you go there in person, kind of develop a plan to where you can hang out in certain areas for a long period of time and really absorb the experience. Don't be in a rush to try to see everything because, especially at COTA, it's such a big facility. You're just not going to be able to accomplish that in the short period of time that these cars are on track. So pick a couple places, really get a comfortable spot, a good visual of the cars, and just enjoy it. Enjoy that experience of being there in person. My favorite experience throughout the weekend that is probably going to sit with me for a very long time, and it was an emotion that I hadn't felt in a really long time either, was watching those cars grid up at the starting line, and we were in a great visual spot to spectate the start of this race, and watching those red lights illuminate and go out and all cars take off at the same time. My heart started beating, and I was like, this is crazy. This is insane. Like seeing an F1 start in person is something that is a feeling that I won't forget for a very long time. And remember, I'm not really that big of an F1 fan. And I was like, that was really cool to see. That was an insane experience to see in person.
Oh man, it was so cool watching those lights light up and then go out. And you can hear it on the broadcast too, but each light, there's a sound and it's almost like a heartbeat. So you have this sense that like, here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. And so the anticipation building for those 5 lights, the lights going off, waiting for the cars to start off the line, waiting to see, is that person in second and third going to make progress on passing the person in first? All that. I had that exact same experience, right? Those feelings that you have when
It's
you're
like an
seeing this
emotion
thing.
build up. And you're like, what is about to be unleashed in front of us?
It was definitely an emotional feeling. Like I felt that tightness in my throat.
Yeah.
What am I watching? This is such a cool thing. I think it was really smart and I think I would advise other people. So generally these are 3-day weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some of them are Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Take that first day to explore the facility, get a sense of those vantage points.
Yeah.
Think about where you want to be for qualifying, for the race. If you could stay in one place or if you had to stay in one place, where are you going to get the majority of the kind of experience you're wanting to get? There's places on the track where they look like they'd be a great place to sit. Let's say like right on the main straightaway. But effectively what you're doing is snapping your head from left to right really quickly as they go by and then waiting another minute and a half for them to come back around again. So in a way you'd think, well, being right near the start-finish line would be like, if you're a football fan, being on the 50-yard line or something like that.
Right, yeah.
But it really wasn't that way. You were way better off being at one of the peripheral sides of that straightaway, being all the way at the beginning or all the way at the end so that you could see the braking coming into the turn or the dynamics of the car under load as they come into the turn or the braking all the way at the end of the straightaway where they've built up all this speed and you can see the dynamics of the car under load and under that heavy braking or maybe a passing zone or two. Those kind of things made it a lot more exciting. So I think picking that kind of vantage point in advance and then having your plan for the day of is important. The other thing is just given the mass of people, the logistics of getting places and traffic, and plan to have a lot of extra travel time. And you don't want to spend all this time and energy to go to this place, to gear up, to get there and then miss stuff just because you can't get in from where you are. So plan a little bit of additional space and time.
Now, I would compare going to my first Formula One race like going to Coachella. And I feel like this might be an unfair comparison, but I think like there's a lot of like close relations.
It felt like that.
Because like you think about Coachella, it's an insane mass of people, right? Going to one location. It's difficult to get to Coachella and it's difficult to get out at the end of the time. I mean, just the logistics of moving people around. Now there's the people that go to Coachella because they're like, hey, my favorite artist is performing and they're just really into music and they love it. And there's the massive people and they love watching someone perform in a group of people because there's that energy that adds to the experience too. And just like the F1 race start, I think the reason why it was so exciting and had such an emotion behind it is you could feel everyone else's anticipation there waiting for that start. The mass of people really added to the experience in the same way of watching a live concert or something like that. Now, I would also say the amount of mass that goes to Coachella, and I would compare that to the mass that goes to F1, you do have this somewhat of a sensation that there's people that are going to these events for the simple sake to say that they've gone to this event.
Right.
The people, the LA influencers that go to Coachella to be like, look, I'm at Coachella and I dressed up because I went to Coachella. You kind of got that similar vibe where it's like, there was a lot of people there to watch Formula One. And I'm like, I can't imagine that every single one of these people is like a diehard fan that absolutely loves racing and motorsports. I'm sure there's a lot of casual fans that have started to get into Formula One because of Drive to Survive, all of the media, this, that, the other, and they're there just because they want to brag about being at a Formula One race.
They have a huge amount of momentum right now. So yeah, there were a lot of new fans out there, people who had their very brand new looking merch that they just bought for this purpose, that they maybe glommed onto the series leader or the person whose name they hear the most. You know, there was a huge amount of representation for Red Bull and Max Verstappen, more than I even expected, since he's been sort of cast as the villain in Formula One, right? He's got his 4 wins in a row, and you know, it's fun to not be a fan of the most popular thing, but people who come new to the sport, that's easy to kind of hang your hat on. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Be a fan of the person who's likely to win or who's one of the faster people out there. I really enjoyed seeing some of the crazy get-ups. A couple of the brands were providing weird hats or kind of like funny paraphernalia that you could wear at the racetrack. We saw Williams has Duracell as their primary sponsor. They had these big foam hats with the Duracell battery on top and the F1 arrow attached to it, and they were kind of goofy looking. We saw a guy who was super dedicated, who had the entirety of the Charles Leclerc Ferrari Formula One car as a model on his head. And I've seen that only in Japan at the Suzuka race before, so I was really surprised to see this in Texas. But literally wearing what's got to be like an 8th scale, a 4th scale, giant model car on their head. And by the way, it was really hot. So these people wearing these special get-ups, these costumes, there was a giant beer can guy. We saw the Lucha Libre wrestlers, the Mexican wrestlers were out there. All these people in all these crazy get-ups. You're like, geez, they're really committed. It's like 94 degrees outside, and they got to be sweating under that banana hood that they're wearing for Banana Leclerc. You know, just that kind of stuff.
No, it's so funny. Like, the people watching was phenomenal. Like, in between sessions, you're just watching these masses of people move around the track. And yeah, you just see all sorts of outfits, get-ups, swag, team gear, all this sorts of stuff. It's highly, highly entertaining. I think it was mind-blowing for me to go to a motorsport event that was trendy, like societally trendy. And that's the first time I've ever experienced that, of just like, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people that have taken the time, money, and commitment to be here to watch Formula One. And just the whole spectacle of that and the energy was just so shocking and surprising to me.
Austin's a really fun town and is, I think, well situated for this kind of thing. The whole town looked like they showed up and were there to support or at least promote the race that was going on. There were F1 fan merchandise booths and stores, pop-ups all around the downtown in addition to at the racetrack. it felt like they were very supportive of that activity because they knew it was, good for their city. Something that I think differentiates this experience, right, from a NASCAR race, from an IndyCar race, from an NHRA drag race, is the scope. Those are all sort of national or regional or even local type of sanctioning bodies or races. You go to this thing and there's definitely a global, international feel to it. The teams come from different places. There's definitely a global perspective and something that makes this thing feel bigger than if you go to a NASCAR race, an IndyCar race. Something that I'd only ever felt when I attended a race in Europe for the European Le Mans series. And of course, Europe has much closer borders and many more countries in close proximity to each other than we're used to here in North America. So the sense of that is maybe sort of built in where, there's just multiple countries because they're all close to each other. But that sense of this thing that we're here to watch and experience has a purview that's broader than just people in Texas who came to watch racing for the day. People came from all around the world to watch this thing. We know it was being broadcast all around the world. The scope of excitement, viewership, awareness, all of those things, it's kind of like it finally came to the U.S. to the point where a Formula One driver could walk around in a city undisturbed, undetected as an anonymous individual up to about a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now Charles Leclerc or Alex Albon or Pierre Gasly, people that might be considered not the first names that would roll off the top of your list for Formula One, those people are as famous as Hollywood celebrities or, influencers or whoever else people identify, just seeing them on the street now. So that brought something additional to this experience where, again, IndyCar, NASCAR, those are great series, but they don't have that level of prominence or awareness to the point where some of the top drivers in those series could go walk around in a city in the United States and nobody would know who the heck they are.
So to wrap up my thoughts, going to my first ever Formula One race in person. Now, yes, there was the downsides of this seemed like a lot of effort to go to something, to fight the crowds, to only see a little bit of the track, kind of in comparison to my experiences with some other racing, IndyCar, NASCAR. Those are a lot easier events to go to get more out of. But for whatever reason, seeing Formula One cars in person, there was something that was like more substantial about that than when I went to my first NASCAR race, which was really, really long ago, or my first IndyCar race. Like this seemed so much more significant. I would be on the fence to go to another one. I wouldn't say no. I don't think I'm like immediately trying to put it on my calendar to go to another one. But what I will say is that I think it is worth going to a Formula One race in person at least once. Like if you've been watching this on television or have even like this small little interest in Formula One, going and seeing it in person will completely change your perspective about it. So I went in at like, I don't really watch F1 races. I kind of care less. I keep up on like the recaps or whatever, but like haven't really been engaged with it. Since going to this race, every single day we would come back, I was like, all right, we got to watch like all the post-race interviews. We have to see like, what is everyone talking about? What are their vibes? What are they thinking? Like all this other stuff. And I was like, I've never been engaged with this sport to that level until I saw it in person. I don't know what it was that like flipped in my mind, but like seeing it, feeling it, experiencing that live experience and understanding like the masses and the fandom and the energy that surrounds Formula One and its significance right now. And it's kind of made a fan out of me. And it's like, now I'm actually paying attention to like going into Mexico. And like, I'm really excited that like Verstappen was able to close the gap and like the title fight going into the championship is going to be so much closer. And it's like, I didn't used to care about this stuff. Like this has kind of grabbed me into the sport like I didn't think it was going to. And I will definitely give that credit to seeing it live in person. Like if I watched it on television, I would never have that interest. But now seeing these cars live, now I have that like draw for whatever reason.
It was a really fun experience. I went away from it thinking a lot of the things we talked about as disadvantages of seeing a race in person, but still really energized. Even with the idea in my mind that, the Las Vegas Grand Prix is coming up. And as much as that looks like this contrived experience where they made a street course out of something that really shouldn't have been a street course, and they're doing it more for the spectacle of races going down the Las Vegas Strip and the advertising opportunities, the commercial entities that can be involved with this, the night race that they've made out of it just as like a Vegas experience. But I'm sort of excited about the prospect of something like that. And I'm considering trying to get to that if I can. Whereas beforehand, I was like, I'll hang back. And I'd really only want to watch a race that was at a circuit. And that would be my preference. But knowing that that's going to be even closer to In Our Backyard coming up soon makes me sort of interested and curious about it in a way that I didn't expect to be before. And one of the other things that was kind of cool there, and we're going to talk about this in at least one, if not multiple future episodes, one of the reasons we decided to attend this race at Circuit of the Americas was we had some important presence and business to take care of at the race.
A story that we've talked about previously, which is the Toro Rosso. And yeah, we're not going to ruin too much, but the Toro Rosso traveled with us, or we traveled with it. But the Toro Rosso was on display at COTA, which is unbelievable. So, I mean, think about it. That car was down in Monterey for Laguna Seca, the Rolex Motorsport reunion.
Right.
Then it was up in the Pacific Northwest.
Up
We
near
talked
Seattle.
about we talked about that event that we were there for, the Northwest Exotics.
Brought it back to the Bay Area to where it's been present at Club Wheelhouse.
Yeah, and we got to do some awesome media with a couple of my friends doing some photos and videos of the car, which was unbelievable. Anytime you get to spend around a Formula One car is like pinch me moments. And then we were able to ship that car to Austin, Texas, and it was there. It got to see the Grand Prix as well.
It was a really cool display put on by F1 Authentics, the group who are licensed by and involved with Formula One directly for buying, acquiring, and showcasing Formula One gear, cars, parts of cars, helmets, race suits, anything that might be considered memorabilia around racing. So they did a great job in showcasing the car in a great location right between the main straightaway and that turn one big red hill that was there. It got a huge amount of exposure. It was in a great place to show the car off and be there out there gleaming in the sun, seeing the depth of the paint on that car when there was still paint on Formula One cars, and lighting up so many people. And we got to meet a lot of really cool people and see friends. But it was really cool to do things like hang out with the University of Texas marching band. They were going by, getting ready to go out on track pre-race. And some of them came over to the display where the Formula One car was, and they said, can we take a look? And it was a really exclusive kind of a thing. Like, people weren't allowed up close right next to the car. But for full disclosure, I was a band nerd. I was in marching band in high school. And so when I saw this group of musicians coming over and they were so excited and they were just wanting to convene, kind of commune with this thing, this amazing car that they can get up close to, we had to facilitate that. So we had effectively the majority of the University of Texas marching band, which is a huge, huge organization, kind of come through and walk around and pose with the car, which was really fun. But it was really cool to see people we know in this place where we are, where we're here to do a thing and watch a thing and have this car on display that's representative of it all. Just the combination of that was an experience in and of itself.
No, it was a really cool whole weekend, and that was a major part of it. And we spent a lot of time with the car and noticing the crowds, and I think that was kind of another really fun part of the weekend, was just seeing how that car being there was such a big deal for people to see, and being able to share that car with the fans and the people that were really going to care about seeing it in person was awesome and unbelievable. And I think that's what gave me such an appreciation for the fans of Formula One and the passion and the interest that really goes with those people and putting all the time, money, and effort to go to these events and that whole deal. So all in all, I mean, it was a phenomenal trip to COTA and experiencing Formula One for the first time. It's definitely an unforgettable trip, and got to give massive thanks to F1 Authentics for facilitating all that they did for us to be able to go and enjoy the weekend and enjoy the race. Also, the Exotics Network, who were nice enough to allow the Toro Rosso to be on display at one of their pre-events, as well as on display right next to their hospitality area, and to allow us to enjoy their hospitality area and viewpoint from their vantage point as well. And thanks, Todd, for bringing me along once again for another fun adventure.
Absolutely. Kind of experience that's so much better when shared. Shout out to the folks over at COTA as well. They did such a good job putting on this event, managing it, for the number of people that were there and the activities that were going on. It felt, pretty well organized, all things considered. So great job there. And I got to give a shout out to the city of Austin. It sort of punches way above its weight. It's the kind of place that, it's cool and different, and I can't really compare it to any other city I know. And that's saying something, it's a special place and if you have a reason to go out there, whether it's for motorsports or music or otherwise, you'll probably have a good time there. So yeah, what a great experience all around. And it was really nice to be able to share that with you in real time, kind of compare notes and our different experiences in motorsports. And this time I felt like I got to show you something instead of you taking me to something. So thanks for that and being there with me and sharing in the experience.
Well, awesome. Thanks for exposing me to Formula One. Now I'm addicted to another form of motorsports. It's a lot to keep track of now. NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One.
It keeps you busy, but it's all good stuff. It's the kind of thing we love, and it lights us up so much, and we love coming here to talk about and share with you too. So thanks for listening. This has been the Cold Start Podcast.